Well, interesting you pose the question, is it worth reviewing the way the charges are struck? Because it does, to me, it is a complex process and a complex bunch of formula. And incidentally, annually we review elements of the charging independently, so we have an independent person come in and review those. But it is complex even for staff to get their head around it, so I would totally get that consent holders out there who have a vague interest in it other than the bottom line on the invoice can't connect with it. And so perhaps there is merit in taking an arm's length assessment of the whole package and saying, is there a simpler way that gets us the same outcome, recognising that there will be highs and lows, and some years, some catchments, some consent holders will pay for work they're not receiving, and we would need to communicate that to them if we took an averaging approach and spread it across all consent holders.
Sorry, Ian, I'm going to give you a view.
All right.
CEO? No. The whole point of base charges was there's a discrete amount of work to be done that has a start and a finish point, and we don't perpetuate it. And as soon as we average, we'll average the perpetuation. So, sorry.
Okay, so that answers that. The other approach is that you've got zone-based approaches and catchments, and that you could aggregate some of that stuff up. But it is a complex set of formula. There are positives, as you've just heard, pros and cons with any approach that you might take. The simpler you make it, the less equitable it might become. Is one of the challenges we would face. And look, in terms of communications, I wasn't here at the early implementation phase, but I think probably with the benefit of hindsight, a more aggressive communication campaign right from the get-go may have helped. I would make the observation that in the 2 years I've been sitting around while invoices have gone out, the volume of calls to us expressing concern has diminished. So every year has got less, and the staff tell me that's less than from the first year. So there's a steady decline of people expressing concern as they understand it. So it might be one of those things that was kind of difficult to chew off once at the outset, but there's a growing understanding and acceptance of it. We just need to nail those people who have dropped off the communication chain in some form or have never been connected into it properly.
Any other questions, Councillor Scott?
The points that the submitter raised was that the expert evidence has to be provided by the consent holder in spite of the science that's been collected. The staff actually suggest that this is not actually what's happening. Perhaps the staff could tell me, in all the consents that have been up for renewal in the last 5 years, how many AEEs, Assessment of Environmental Effects, have been provided by the applicant?
Well, I couldn't give you an accurate picture of that because I simply don't have all of those figures before me, but I could say that in terms of the large consent replacement processes like the Twyford renewals, like the Tuk renewals, like the Ngāruaru renewals prior to that, there were none, and the science evidence was presented by the council to the decision maker, and that's, in my experience, been typical of processes prior to my time joining the council. But largely the applicants don't provide that information. They rely on the council doing that work for them, which I guess goes to my point that that's the most cost-effective way of doing it, because for 150 consent holders to duplicate AEEs would just be ridiculous.
Chairman, just by way of preamble, that really was the trade-off that was sold when the Section 36 charges was introduced, that when the AEE had to be done for the... Perhaps it's time to have a helicopter view of the Section 36 charges. I've listened carefully to Mr Maxwell both today and had several conversations with him, and there is undoubtedly a lot of confusion around the consents, around the Section 36 charges, and I think a lot of them are loaded up with, because they get them monitoring fees, and a whole lot of invoices seem to come in bulk, and so it sort of adds to the angst and the confusion, but I'd rather hope that there is a way of simplifying I think we perhaps have complicated the Section 36 charges, and I think we sitting around this table equally have to take our share of blame, because when the presentations were given to us and when the scheme was perhaps sold to us by Mr. Liu, I don't think perhaps we quite understood what we were agreeing to. I certainly didn't anyway. I'm prepared to say that now. So if you have the ability to have an overall look at it from the top down, I think the timing is probably right, and certainly I'd be very supportive of that.
Just can I ask the question that should have been asked there? Is the annual plan the time to make that comment?
We couldn't fit that into this process. We just simply wouldn't be able to pull the resources together to conduct a meaningful and thorough review for this.
But is it something we could suggest would come back to Council through one of the committees, a brief outline of where we are to date, some stats and figures and things, and maybe then an instruction could come to you about what should happen in the future, perhaps?
I mean, a useful process might be to gather the information, put the facts and figures down, and review it in the cold light of day and say, well, what are the options here? How could we change this if we wanted to? But to try and shoehorn it into this process now, we couldn't do it justice.
So on that basis, can we get to the recommendation as it sits there?
Well, you don't do it now, but you can make the decision to that the review be undertaken in the future, right now.
Happy to move as it stands. Any seconder for that? I'll second that. You wish to speak?
Chairman, when we introduced these charges some time ago, and it was done through the annual plan process, we did consult quite widely on it and the various models as to whether it be averaged across or whether it would be zone-based, and what were the pros and cons. They were all spelled out then. And obviously those that were in an area which has had a high input of scientific work going on were in favour of averaging, and those on the periphery that didn't have any work going on were quite definitely in the favour of zone-based. And I mean, you look at what scheme suits you best at the time, don't you? So that's human nature. I think the thing is that underpinning the work that goes on, the beneficiaries of all this work are actually and this was decided at the time we did introduce the scheme and looked at why we should charge this part of the science to it. The beneficiaries are those who are going to get access to the water. And all of this work that's currently going on is underpinning now how we will manage all those, the tank group, the Tutaikuri, Ahuriri, Narora, Karamu catchments, and the interrelatedness of the groundwater and the surface water. Ms. Beastie makes a point in her submission that assumptions have been made due to insufficient science. That is actually not so. All of that, what she was referring to, was supported by hydrological science and hydrological tests, and very exact ones at that. The work that's now undergoing is the balance right across the catchment. It's not the individual effect of the individual take on the neighbouring take or on the nearest surface water body. It is the whole catchment balance that we're looking at developing the model, and this is one of the carry forwards that we discussed the other day. So to me, what is needed here is some really good communication, because no matter how much we've communicated, it hasn't got through. And I'm disappointed to find things like there's been a change of policy. Mr. Chairman, that change of policy happened with the plan change in 2001. And somehow it still isn't understood. When we went through the Twyfords, because we're so concerned about getting everybody up to date with an understanding of the issues, there were 3 roadshows. There were 3 mediated pre-hearing meetings so that everybody could get the issues and can grapple with them and understand them. But we still didn't get there. So communication is something we just simply have to keep hammering away and hammering away and hammering away on. And to me, that's where the importance of this part lies, is continuing a very clear communication strategy that can get through that there is value in this, that you are getting something for it. But you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And I'll give you one example of a consent holder on the Caramoos who walked in waving a draft consent that had draft written all over it, hadn't opened it beyond page 1, said, don't need to submit, got everything I want, and hadn't even read it. So it's sometimes very hard until the person is impacted by it to actually get the message across. So I just say keep on the communication and keep on trying to improve it.
Thank you. Seconder, just briefly, the challenge I see to put an extra resolution is I actually want to see a snapshot of where we are today, what we've done, what we've, not so much what we've spent, but what resources have we put into communication, what outputs have we delivered, before I'd go to the next step of doing a helicopter overview of something that actually may just need a tweak in the direction of more robust, I dare not say continuous, because that's probably one of the issues, is information overload out there at the moment. The mailbox is chocker every day with stuff that we just sometimes don't get round to reading, so certainly in the rural RD space, that's for sure. So I'm happy to support this as it is now, although there is a very strong indication that at some stage that snapshot would be greatly appreciated by this council, assuming this gets through. Sorry, other speakers?
I'm happy to support that. I think staff probably are aware of the concerns that have been echoed around this table by Councillor Douglas and myself, and I'm quite happy to leave it in their hands, Mr Chairman, and support the resolution.
Thank you. Other speakers? Put that motion, then all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Page 49, Transport. Any questions in regard to issues raised there? Someone happy to move? Pardon me, Councillor Dick? Okay. So, no, Councillor Gilbertson put his hand up first. Sorry. Oh, you're happy to second. So you're happy to move with the spelling fixed, which says... Okay. Wish to speak? Councillor Gilbertson. No other speakers. Put that motion, then all those in favour please say aye. Come on, a bit more vigour. Aye, that's better. Contrary, no. Carried. Okay, page 50. Waipukuro to Waipawa River Walkway and Cycle Trail funding application. There you go. And there's a fair bit of information there. Councillor Gilbertson, you wish to speak?
I think the request here is, do you want to move it? Or
No. Have you got any questions?
I don't know. Well,
Just
the question. No, I don't have a question really. Just a clarification that they're not saying they want $300,000 tomorrow. They're saying that they want to talk to us about getting on with it. Is that correct? Is that the way you see it?
If you go to page 52,
Yeah.
and look at item 10 there, there's sort of been a suggestion
Oh, yeah.
following for consideration, and it certainly would kick the job off.
Well, I think what they're suggesting is that they'd like to know there's $100,000 in the background, but they're not saying give it to us straight away because they've got to develop the plans and develop the budgets and the plans. So that would be very nice to give them $100,000 and say put that in the bank till you're ready. I think what we're talking about here is developing the plans and the budgets and the 5-year plan, and then coming back and saying this is the funding we'll need in stage 1, 2, 3, 4.
But would you not
I recommend they put 100,000.
recommend 10 in its entirety.
Yes, I would, Mr. Chairman.
I thought so.
I'll move it in its
Just
entirety.
before we get there, I don't know, short of doing it myself, I wasn't sure how we were going to get that there.
Well, I thought you
Any questions though first?
My question is, because I read the staff recommendations and I was happy with them, but now we've got to knock 2% off our budget.
Yeah, that was
I'm just
predictable.
wondering whether we should be cutting back on all this funding, not putting new
So
funding
your
in.
question is?
My question is, how would this be funded without impacting on the budget? It's from the borrowing facility, but that has to be then funded.
Absolutely.
So that is a cost to council.
We understand your question. Mr.
so-
Drury.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, yes, it is a separate funding, loans, but loans come with interest and repayments, but the interest and repayments are coming from this reserve that we have, sale of land non-investment reserve.